Hey everyone, I am Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her Podcast. We have an amazing interview coming up with Miss Toni Moore. She is an attorney. She's going to talk about trademark assets, liabilities, anything that you need to know as far as keeping your business safe and keeping you safe, most importantly. I love topics like this. I hope you guys just go on and watch it on all major platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the above. And we about to have us a good old time getting some real knowledge. So, hey, Toni, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. All is well. How are
Oh,
you?
girl, I'm good. Having a good day so far, especially for it to be a Monday.
Okay. We're gonna keep that vibe. We're gonna keep
Yes,
that
we
vibe.
is. Yes, definitely for sure. So, first and foremost, I want people to get to know you more as far as just you and not you as an attorney. So, could you tell me a little bit more about your upbringing and how were things when you grew up?
Whew. Well, so I actually came from a small town called Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And, I pretty much have encapsulated in a trauma space. I tell my kids today, I was like, when I was growing up, we lived in a new house, a new situation, sometimes a foster experience, sometimes at my grandmama's house, sometimes at my godmom's house. Once a year we moved. So it was a lot of instability. It was a lot of times where we had to get food from a food bank, and even from a housing shelter for men. Maybe that's today why I cannot really eat grilled cheese sandwiches or tomato soup, because that's all that they pretty much provided. And so it was a lot of bad spaces. That so much so that as a spiritual girl, I had to do my own cleansing, and I had to take all of my problems, my pains, and my tears, and all of the nightmares that I used to have a lot of. And I just literally had to throw them into the sea of forgetfulness. Now, the sad part is I missed out because I got rid of a lot of some happy moments, even though they were a few, but it was just too much trauma and too much tears and too much self-hatred and too much bad energy that I couldn't keep living like that. I don't know if you ever met anyone who was afraid of their own shadow, and I couldn't even have like a closet door open, or I was always fearful that something might happen, or you know what I mean? It was just so bad that I was just like, I need to forget all of this. And I had to cleanse myself of my childhood experiences. And there's a lot that still comes up, but it's not as bad as it used to. So
Wow. How long did it take you to actually get in a healing process as far as you just becoming an adult and just dealing with it in your early 20s and 30s?
the thing about it is I wish more people, because I'm like, I look young, but I'm over 50, right? And so it took me a while. It took me up until I was like a mom, and I became a mom the first time at 33, and then I had another one in my later 30s. And I realized that I was carrying a lot of stuff and a lot of pains and a lot of wounds. And I was repeating similar words that my mom used to say to me, to my own child. And then that's when I was like, oh, no,
Oh, wow.
I can't bring this into my childhood experience, because I never want to become that person. That was the one breakthrough. And then my mom, because she passed away, but one time she saw me doing not as bad as she did, but she saw me do the snatcherizations and just the tone of voice that I have with one of my sons. And she was like, Tone. And I looked at her because we didn't have a good experience. Like, we got better when by the time she passed away, but we didn't have a good experience at that time. And she was like, but she ignored me as moms do. And she was like, I just want to say that the thing that I did, if I could do it all over again, I would. You know, it's like I would. And I was just like looking at her like, whatever. She don't understand, because she put too much pain into my experience. But
Right.
then when I saw my own child kind of like shy back the way I used to shy back from her, then I heard her words all over again. And that's when I said, well, mom, she couldn't do it because we grown now, and we either liked it or forgave it or we didn't. I was like, but my child, he's still young. And I had another one that was even younger. And so that's when I was like, I got to do it for me, you know?
Wow. So how did you end up fixing that? You went to therapy? Did you and your kids go to therapy?
No, I actually didn't. But I was taking some therapy classes and then I had some therapy training,
Okay.
talking to some therapists. And then I also started my own therapy when I was at in college. I literally went from University of Penn, no, from the projects to University of Penn, and that was a big culture shock. Okay.
Yeah.
But I had taken this class on and I don't know what it was. It was like it was one was abnormal psychology, and the other one was another psychology course. And I learned a lot. And to this day, and this is many years ago because I graduated in 1994. I don't remember the name, but the concept was pretty much like this one of this psychologists called what is it, Erickson. So he had Erickson's 8 stages of development. And what I realized was that, wow, I didn't know how to trust myself. I didn't know how to have my own autonomy. Because I was so fearful of getting we'll say chastise.
Okay.
If I set my mama off or if I trigger her trauma, her chastise or her reaction would be so different that I got to the point I was afraid of my own shadow. But when I realized that, I brought that to the University of Penn, and I was almost about to get myself kicked out because I had a couple other trauma situations that happened and transpired because of that. And I didn't say anything because when I said something before, I got in trouble. And when I was sexually abused and molested, I got in trouble for being a fast girl and things like that. So when the sexual trauma met me at University of Penn, not once, not twice, but 3 times, I was just like, is this going to be my history? Is that
Right.
my mama was abused and now I'm abused and now I'm afraid of my own shadow? Or am I going to take advantage of healing myself? So I really had to, literally, that class with the Erickson's 8 stages of development, we had to do a final course, a final course project, and I used myself. I literally objectified
Wow.
myself, and I literally went through all of the stages and pretty much forced myself to go through all of those stages myself in a whole year time.
Wow, that's deep. And to a point for you to have the strength to do that, that is that's amazing, honestly, because a lot of people are afraid to deal with self and even just find themselves even trying to become a better version of themselves is even hard for them because they have to face reality. And that's a long time of you facing reality and having that for a whole year.
Yes, but I
That's a
had
lot.
But when you hear, like sometimes we don't understand because people think generation choices are curses and depending on where they are. But when I realized in that class that I was re-traumatizing myself from the sexual
Mm,
molesting and also from the rape on college campus, and I was pretty much saying, well, I did it, I brought it on myself, I shouldn't have wore that skirt, or I shouldn't have went to this party, or whatever. And I realized that I was traumatizing myself. So each time I thought about it, it was in my brain, it was happening over and over again. And I was like, oh my God, so
wow.
much that it was even showing up in the classrooms. Like I didn't feel like I was worthy. And, and maybe God is getting back at me and all of this stuff in my brain. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And then I realized that all of the experiences since I was 5 years old, all the experiences since I was 5 years old was really messing me up. It was crazy. And I was like, oh
Wow.
my God, I have to give myself permission to heal. And
Yeah.
literally, I had to walk through my own wounds. And then when I realized, because I went to a couple people and they pretty much was looking at me like, you didn't get over that. And I said, oh my God, I'm carrying them
Wow.
into my present. And they forgot
Yeah.
all about me. I was just a victim in their story and they moved on.com.
Moved on.
Yeah, so I had to make my own healing a priority for me.
Wow. I applaud you for that. That takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to do something like that. I'm happy that you did that for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's huge.
Mhm.
Like seriously. So, how did you end up getting into law school? Like, was that your direction? Because I remember you saying you went from the projects to a university. It was a huge shift. And when you went to the university, was your intentions to go to law school or something shifted you?
Well, so my intentions was, to snatch up a football player, a basketball player, or something. And so then, that was initially. So that's why I came from Harrisburg to Philadelphia. But
Okay.
along the way, during the holidays or when the summer breaks and things like that, my mom had moved from the projects to Section 8. And then she left. She left and went somewhere. I don't know where she went, but she was just like, all right, you grown, you on your own. And I was like, I'm 17, But she was just like, she moved on.com. And so when I went to Milton Hershey School, that's when I learned they had a career day, and just hearing about law and what the lawyers were doing. We weren't doing that in Harrisburg, we didn't have necessarily a career day, but at Milton Hershey School, it was the one day and I heard about law. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm gonna find me a baller. You know what I mean? Along the way. And then I was like, and if but I thought I graduated because before I was just gonna get a drug dealer because that's where we grew up. And it's like
Yeah.
the sugar daddy was a drug dealer. So I went from a drug dealer to a baller, and I tried out a few, but it didn't really happen for me. But when I was about to get kicked out of the University of Penn because I didn't level up to my truest self, was in school, then I had these dreams, and it was like, Tone, if you get kicked out, if you get kicked out, where are you going? You going back to the projects? Like, how do you have that experience at the University of Penn and then go to back to the projects like you ain't never seen a shift in your life? So
Mhm.
inside of me, I did not want to go back from whence I came, and I didn't really have anywhere to go for real because my mom had moved. So I had to like figure it. I had to literally figure it out, and that's how I wrote in my book, Up Level Your Life. Like, girl, you got to up level your life. That's
Yeah.
when I was like, I had to bet on myself because I'm like, where I'm not going back to the projects. I can't go back to Harrisburg because I experienced almost a year in Philadelphia. So to go to Harrisburg back from Philadelphia, that wasn't happening. So that's when but I knew that I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That was in my dream. Like, Tone, you can be a lawyer. You can help other children who had trauma experience and child abuse and abandonment issues. That was my biggest dream. And I did family law actually for about 10 years. And then I got out of that. So the things I used to do, I don't do no more. But
Right.
I made it true. I made it true for me though.
Wow. That
Mhm.
is amazing. So you never expected you just becoming a lawyer then.
Well, I know my family didn't, and I know my mama didn't.
Ooh, man. Well, that was a huge shift. I'm proud of you for even just taking that step, just even becoming one. And that holds a lot of weight, and it show a great example for your boys too.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, you beat poverty.
Okay. Yes.
So let's get into these questions as far as people becoming business owners and them obtaining a LLC. I've seen people get so excited to have their LLC and they really don't understand the meaning behind it and the hard work you have to put in to actually keep it and making sure you're doing right for you to even deal with the IRS and everything. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of things that come with it. Can you let people know when they do obtain a LLC, some of the things that they need to do as far as like filing taxes and more?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you're starting a limited liability company, right? The best thing that you can ever do for yourself is to have a mission, a vision for yourself as a person who is going to be seen and heard and get on podcasts and talk to the people about their your vision and your solution and your big idea of how to make things better. That's the first thing. If you got that and you anchored that into your mind and your soul and your spirit, then whatever else you got to do is just nothing. It's just a task, right? So when
Right.
you got that big vision in your head, Then you say, okay, I got my limited liability company. I got my paperwork from the Secretary of State. You went to the irs.gov. You got your EIN number and it's free. Okay.
Mhm.
Then you also ideally how whoever helped you set up your limited liability company, you have your adoption agree you have your adoption agreement. You're like, okay, this is my agreement. This is what I'm going to do. This is where my company is going to be. In an ideal situation, you go to amazon.com and you purchase your own corporate book. When I set it up for my clients, they all get a corporate book because it's always good to have your documents in place just in case you ever get audited, just in case there's ever a question with regards to, where are your documents or your decisions, right? So you got that. Now, this is assuming that you're just doing it by yourself, not with 7 or 8 people, because sometimes I get those questions and they got a whole entourage of people, and I'm like, "Ooh, you need agreement, you need a partnership." But when it's just you, this right? In an ideal situation, you also have a loan agreement, you know, and a loan agreement from yourself as an individual to yourself as the CEO of your newfound business. Tone, why you do that? You do that because most of the time when we get started in our business, we self fund. We
Yes.
pretty much, borrow, rob Peter to pay Paul, have our own main hustle, our job as our silent investor, as one of my friends call it, and we have that. And we're taking out from our 401k. I know I took out from my 401k. I took out from my credit card company, all of that stuff. But when you have a loan agreement, then when your business starts making money and you start taking out, you don't want to get taxed. It's like now you're repaying. So
Mhm.
literally just make it like an arm's length transaction. Hey, myself, I'm gonna loan this company LLC, 1,000, 2,000, $5,000, right? In an ideal situation, you also will have a registered agent. You can literally go to registeragent.com, whatever state you're in, there's probably a registered agent. So Georgia registered agent, Pennsylvania registered agent, New Jersey registered agent. You do that because a lot of us are working from home. I have a home office, but I also have an office. But a lot of people are working from home. And for real, you really don't want people all up in your business knowing where you
Yeah.
live. Okay. So
True.
it's always good to go and get a registered agent address. And if you're thinking about, up leveling and not always self-insuring yourself and self financing yourself, then you do want to have an office, even if it's a virtual office from like Da Vinci or Regis or WeWorks, something like that. Because when someone is going to look you up, they're going to look you up and they're going to see if you have a legit business office. If they think that you're working from home or shooby doop or whatever, the likelihood of you getting business credit is slim to none. I don't care how much money you make, right? So you do all of that. And then you also have your business account open. I say have 3 business accounts: one for your operating accounts, one for money coming in, one for money going out, your operating account, and also one that you are saving at least like 15 to 20% of what you bring into your business for taxes, because IRS don't play. Okay.
They don't.
They do not play at all. So
Mhm.
if there's a tax loophole, we get into that maybe like the first year is all about getting acclimated, especially if you spent so many years as I have. I mean, I've been a side hustler since day one because my godmom always had a business and a side hustle. And so it was like rich mom, poor mom. And the rich mom always had a side hustle. So I was like, you know what? I need a side hustle too. So that's how I got a chance to change that with regards to it. But those are pretty much the things that you need to get started. I have that thing, it's called Legally Launch, and it's literally like, here's what Toni just said that you need to legally launch your business. So you
Right.
know legit.
So one of the next steps is trademark.
Mhm.
A lot of people, they have these logos, they have their content, they have everything, and they don't cover themselves. Even as far as copyright, and it's the two different things. However, it still involves your business, and you have to protect yourself. So, could you let people know a little bit about trademark and copyright and their information as well?
Absolutely. So with regards to trademarking your business, always remember it's like intellectual property IP, right? So when and you always think about your intellectual IP portfolio, like what do you own, what do you have? Copyright is pretty much your interviews. This is copyright, you interviewing us, and you're asking the questions. It's on your platform, and if you wanted to turn around and leverage that into something, then that's what you do, right? That's under copyright.gov. Blog posts up to 10, you can file copyright.gov. Songs, I actually write songs. In my head, when I write songs, I hear all of the chords and the strings and the melody line. But that's all at copyright.gov, right?
Right.
If you a trademark is different, as you said, and that's when you have like the name of your podcast, the name of your retreat, the name of your name that you go by. Like most artists, they have an alias and they don't want anyone else. I always tell people we wouldn't have a little Nas X if Nas actually had trademarked his name. Then he could have shut that ish down. You know what I
Right.
mean? But when you don't trademark it, someone else will take a derivative or take ownership of what you call yourself because you
Hmm.
didn't take ownership of it. So whatever the name or tagline, whatever the identifier is, then that's under trademark. And there's 45 different ways to trademark your brand. 45 different ways, literally from makeup to bundles to podcasts to church services to legal services, therapy services, online Shopify, all of that stuff. It's 45
Wow.
different ways. It is. And people are like, whoa, because they're like, well, can I just do it one time? No. Trademarks is for bosses. You know what I mean? If you don't want
Yes.
anyone else, you already know it's a cost to be the boss. So you understand that, okay, Tone said any name or niche or tagline, anything that identifies me as the owner, the maker. Even people want to do t-shirts. They're like, oh, I'm branding myself, so I have a t-shirt line. And I tell people, unless you competing with Fashion Nova,
That's for
okay,
real.
then
Seriously.
okay, so you don't really need to do 25. But if you are doing podcasting, are you doing education? Are you doing like I don't know, like a coaching program, or if you're doing like a magazine, then that's 41. That's where a lot of people are in that 41 phase. And then if you have an online store, then that's 35. Those are the main ones that I know of. Hair bundles is 26, and makeup is 3. So there's so many different trademark
Yes.
classifications, but you have to understand and appreciate, because one of my clients, she ain't want to pay me, so she got somebody else to do it, but they put her in the wrong classification.
Ooh, that's a lot. And she waited about almost a year for that.
You know it. How you know that? Because it takes almost a whole year to
Yeah.
find out that you ended up in the bad
Girl,
classification.
'cause I got my second year of podcast, and I made sure I got myself trademarked. I had saw someone do something kind of similar to what I was doing. So
Yes.
I'm like, man, I'm about to trademark. I was like, let me get their logo was almost the same. The name of their podcast was almost the same. I was like, yeah, let me handle this real quick.
Did you know this
So
person?
no, I didn't.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Nope, I did not know who they were. It just came out of nowhere. One of my friends and that lives in New York, she noticed it and she
Oh,
was like, "Do you know who this is?" I'm like, "No, I don't know this person." So, but they didn't never continue it.
okay.
Sometimes, people go on until they actually see how much work you have to put in. Do they
I
like
mean, it's
step
work.
back? Yes, it is a lot of work. But I'm glad that I did that long process
Yes.
and made sure everything was intact. And I plan on doing marketing a lot more that I plan on adding to it as well.
I mean, if nothing else, you got to put that ring on that IP. You know what I mean? Because when you put a ring on it, people have to respect it. It literally, I always think of it like, I used to be a divorce attorney, so sometimes people be like, "And can I sue her because she took my man and she did that?" And we know a couple of celebrities who got sued because they
Yeah.
had some situationships in the bedroom with a person with a ring on their finger. And that's the
Mhm.
same way with regards to intellectual property. When you put that ring on IP and then somebody else try to get a money gasm from your brand, then you could cease and desist on them. You could sue them for fraternizing with the enemy and all of that stuff. You know, you
Yeah.
can't do it if you don't have a ring on it. There's not an
Mhm.
R behind it, because a lot of people got the TM and then they be like, can you cease and desist on them? No, you trying to mark like people trying to man. Until you put
Mhm.
that ring on it, it's a situation.
Yes, it is. So, I want to ask you, a lot of people own businesses and
Mhm.
everything, but we have to cover ourselves as our business as a whole if we were to pass away.
Mhm.
What is some of the things that people need to plan ahead of time? Because a lot of times people they want to plan ahead because they be like, no, I'm jinxing myself and I don't want to do this, and you keep putting it off. But it's very important for us to actually know the steps and
Mhm.
know what we need to do so that we can actually pass on our generational wealth instead of actually talking about passing it on. So, what are the legal steps that we have to take?
Well, one, I want you to understand, and I was just talking to another client today with regards to it. Is most people don't want to talk about estate planning
Yeah.
because it's upon your death, right?
Yes.
But what when you're a business owner and you are thinking about generational wealth and passing it on, legacy building, then you have to think about succession planning. What's going to happen to your business when you decide that you no longer want to hustle? Because the hustle is for real, you know? But when
Mhm.
you no longer want to hustle, or if you become mentally incapacitated, or if you want to go away for 6 to 9 months and you don't want to be a part of it, who's going to take ownership of the business? Because a lot of us are building up a business, building up a bank account, building up an IP portfolio of assets, but we don't have a succession plan in place. Are we going to sell it? Are we going to buy it? Are we going to let our family members take manage it for us, and then now we're just taking the royalties and the receipts? So that's succession planning, right? Another planning is legacy planning, which is not necessarily about the death date, but it's about, okay, so now this is your legacy. This is like when we talk about building a legacy of wealth, or we're having generational
Mhm.
wealth, or creating legacy, financial legacy that changes the trajectory of our destiny. That's not about death. Now that's about, okay, what do you have? What do you own? A lot of my clients are now asking about trust funds, because it's not, trust funds is not about your death date. It's about the date that you started, and to encapsulate all of your entrusting your empire into a trust fund. So
Yes.
that is something that is like, it allows you to, now you take ownership, you take onus of the responsibility of your intellectual property, the ownership of your limited liability company. I have some clients that have several. You know, one of my clients, she had over 16
Wow.
LLCs, but she has a lot of real estate. And usually the rule of thumb is every 3 to 5 properties, you buy another, you set up another limited liability company, because that's asset protection 101. But just think, if she passed away and she didn't do any of that, because I have probate practice in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Just think if she passed away and had 16 different companies, and she only had one child that's still a minor. That would have been messy, right?
Yeah, it
Or
would.
like, or if it was a man and he had several children, from different moms, and they were all minors, now the moms are fighting in court about what their child is going to get. You don't have to do like that. Like, I tell someone, even if that was a situation that you know of, or it came down the family tree, it doesn't have to be your legacy. You get a chance to change that narrative. So we said we're changing the narrative by setting up a trust, like literally entrusting your estate or your empire, so to speak, into a trust fund, where now you've identified yourself as the grantor. You've identified your businesses that you want to pass to your family, maybe some property you want to pass to your family, some businesses you want to pass to your family, intellectual property that you want to pass without penalty. So
Yeah.
you're setting it all up. You're paying all of the transfer fees during your lifetime. You're living in the legacy home. You're eating from the legacy table. You are even having your family members become part of the legacy board. And so that's where you're setting it up during your lifetime. That's one of the things I like. It's like you're literally like rethinking legacy, because most people think legacy is upon your death. But
Yes.
I'm like, it's not upon your death. It's
Mm-mm.
like legacy is what you're doing during your lifetime. Because if you
Yes.
didn't do it on this side while you're breathing, then guess what? No one can receive it when you're no longer here, when you have transitioned to another ether, you know? So that's
Mm-hmm.
where we're always talking about that. And when people ask me, well, Tone, I want to know more about trust and I want to set it up, I said, oh, good. I'm going to send you this worksheet so you can identify what you own, what businesses you own, what intellectual property you have, what trademarks, what copyrights, because you need to identify all that you own and then identify who do you want to receive and how do they receive it? Do they receive it upon your death? Or are you going to use it as to fund a trust that's going to help yourself, your children, your family, maybe even your community through a charitable lead trust or a charitable remainder trust, you know? So that's how I'm getting more people to rethink legacy, not necessarily upon your death, because, you know, that's
Yeah.
passed down. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that's especially when we're black and we're brown, we're women, we have that trauma. So it does something to us. But the wealthy people, come on now, a lot of them, when I went to University of Penn, they were trust fund babies already. They were legacy
Yes.
children. Their mama went, their daddy went, their grandparents went. You know, they already knew. They had already gone to prep schools and all of that stuff. So, but
Yeah.
when we're going from one socioeconomic class to another, we literally have to do what I had to do, like heal myself, heal your heart, heal your mindset, and then be like, okay, this is new levels. And I like to say new levels, not new levels, new devils, new levels, new legacies.
That's true. That is so true. And I'm so glad that you touched on that because a lot of people are afraid to take those steps when
Mhm.
those steps are so important. I had dealt with a lot as far as like when my mom passed away, just getting things in order and maybe probate court, getting the houses like switched over. It was a lot. It
Mhm.
was a lot. Luckily, I was like informative of a lot of things and different steps and procedures that I had to do. And I had her do a few things years before she even passed,
Mhm.
from me like just developing and gaining so much knowledge of it.
Mhm.
But it's just the fact of even just going through probate court when your family doesn't have a living will, it makes things a lot more difficult and it could take you years,
Yeah.
like years before you can even obtain something. And just leaving your family, just to carry that much on them and trying, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And did you have siblings?
Yes, I have a brother.
So I had when I used to do family law, and I used to do family law, and I used to do divorce law. My estate probate folks was worse than my divorce people,
Whew.
because there's like a spirit of entitlement that shows up as well. And
Mhm.
especially if mom or dad had children, is when mom has extra children, for some reason that's more approved than when dad has extra children, especially if it came from out of the wedding vows of the parents. Then the siblings always want to gang up on the child that was born out of the wedding vows. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's the child too. Or, you know, if they had siblings were mad about their parents and they picked sides and someone passed away and there's no
Mhm.
will, there's no written instructions. I'm like, whoo, it's just so much. And
It's
if
a
we
lot.
if we really want to heal that wound and especially rethink legacy, parents, especially, you know, when you're getting older, don't think of it like I don't want to die, but think of it like I don't want to cause more confusion and chaos and calamity,
Mhm.
because now they can't talk to you, they can't have that conversation with you, and now they're going to put it on their other siblings, or you know, and it becomes messy. So sometimes it's more not necessarily the legal side of passing, because literally it's about transferring a deed or transferring a car or transferring a business. That's paperwork. But when you got some
Mhm.
emotions with some unhealed wounds attached to those
Girl,
emotions,
that's a lot.
yes. Yeah.
That is a lot. Thank God my mom, she raised me and my brother pretty close.
That's good.
So we didn't have no problems at all. It was just smooth sailing. And he's like, okay, okay. And I was always in charge of everything. So I just made sure he knew everything that I was doing. And it was cool.
Okay.
Man, we didn't have no problems at all.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. And
Yeah.
then when I have cases where there's no problems, I'm like, I feel like I need to give you some money back or something, you know?
I know because it becomes a lot, but I've learned a lot by
Mhm.
even just doing things like that, and I started planning for myself.
Ah,
I had a regular life insurance policy, but I found out that me having a whole life insurance policy was a lot more lucrative for me and my
mhm,
family.
mhm.
With me not having children, I could have nieces, nephews, or whomever.
Yes.
But it was also helpful for me being a business owner as well.
Mhm.
So it was good for me to even just, take these steps and transition everything and look into even getting a trust as
Mhm.
well, just
Mhm.
different things. But I'm taking it step by step and I'm learning it. I'm glad I'm doing it now though.
Yes. Yeah. And someone they have sometimes people come um before I made the switch, before I was helping whosoever will, okay? But I tell people things I used to do, I don't do no more. So I just like the entrepreneurial space because entrepreneurs, we see a problem and we want to fix it,
Yeah.
and those are the ones who are also overcoming poverty, and they're utilizing their intellectual property and turning their LLCs into long-lasting currency. And so that's a different conversation. And it
Mm.
allows me to literally be the legal diva with regards to, okay, so we're going to talk about taxes, and we're going to talk about intellectual property, and we're going to talk about estate planning and trust, and then we're going to negotiate some stuff so that when somebody come from your assets to try to give you some STDs after some money gasms, and them STDs is like a substantial transactional disorder, because sometimes we just end up in bed and getting some money gasms, and working with people who we don't
Mhm.
really need to be working with. Or if I think about back in college days when people were like, girl, I secured, myself a couple, 2 or 3
Mhm.
layers. And I'm like, similarly, you secure your business entity with 2 or 3 layers with regards to, it's not condoms this time, but it's contracts.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
that even comes with like what advice do you have for people that have a business already and they plan to get married? What is some of the steps that they need to take with that so that not saying they go get divorced tomorrow, but it's a possibility.
Well, as a former divorce attorney, I know, and statistically speaking, right? Like when I got married, I was broke. Okay. Like I literally graduated from law school. I took the bar exam in the summer and got married in October. I ain't have hit. Okay. But if you're building, right, there's a lot of people who are doing the darn thing. They're building, they're making money moves, they have all these assets. You can do one of two things, right? You can either have a blind trust that somebody knows about that you don't allegedly know about, kind of like what Donald Trump had, a blind trust,
Yeah.
and he didn't know about, but come on now, his children was a trustee. So with a blind trust, you can't be the trustee. But if you know somebody and you know where the bodies are buried and all the skeletons, and they won't do you no harm, you can set up an irrevocable trust. And because nobody really knows what you own until you put your business out there.
Yeah.
So when you have an irrevocable blind trust, even an irrevocable trust, that has a business entity with an EIN number that is not attached to your social security number.
Mm.
So you don't really have to negotiate with regards to any of anything, with prenups, because you don't own ish.
Right.
Or if you want to confess and let people know exactly what you own, then and then have a prenuptial agreement. I just remember thinking about Wendy Williams. How you doing? She
Yeah.
didn't negotiate a prenup. She was just like, oh, I didn't feel comfortable. And sometimes women don't have comfortable feel comfortable. Now my husband said that he heard somebody, he said men marry for love and women marry for business. I said, well, that's usually the second time around. The first time we probably fall in love, got dignitized or whatever. But but we don't want to mess things up. But I noticed that there's a lot of men in the industry and celebrities and also ballers and shot callers. If they get married with a stack of cash, they making someone sign. So women have to get out their feelings and get into the facts, knowing that everything is negotiable,
Yeah.
even prenups. I read somewhere where Donald Trump, I think he had his first wife was Ivanka. She
Mhm.
had to sign, he had her sign post-nups agreements, like 7 of them.
Ooh.
Okay, they had already had the prenup, but then and when he was adding on, he was like, you know what? We're gonna have some post-nups. He ended up, she ended up staying by his side for the most part, business
Right.
partners, but still. So that's a conversation to be had. Do you marry with no assets? Okay. Or do you have a conversation for a prenuptial agreement so you don't end up like Mary J. Blige? I think she's still paying her ex, you know,
Ooh. And
and
she's doing a lot right now.
yes,
She's doing a lot.
but
Ooh.
she was mad when she said had to. What, she's like, I gotta pay you alimony. He's like, yeah, I have a certain type of lifestyle after being married to you and me helping you level up and things of that nature. But as a former divorce attorney, helping some women who was the ballers and shot callers, I'm like, this would have been totally different if you would have negotiated a prenup. Now he
Girl.
now he gets half, baby, and he gets alimony.
Mm, mm, mm. See, that's why we need conversations like this. Because some people they just go in blindsided, they just don't know. I
Hmm.
understand, okay, everyone, like we love each other. I
Hmm.
want to be with you for eternity. But
Yes.
at the same time, something can snap, something can happen. You just never know. And just protecting yourself and having the respect that that person want to do that after they work so hard and you ain't did nothing. Like,
And if you have kids, because
yeah.
a lot of my clients who did start accumulating assets, they also have children.
Mm,
So if you marry without things in place, a prenuptial agreement in place, and you pass away before the other person, now that spouse inherits and their
everything.
children and their children's bloodline gets it. Because if you set up a trust fund, I think Kobe Bryant had something like that where he has a trust fund, his children are taken from the trust, and Vanessa can benefit from the income, but she can't dismantle it. So that's where you have those precautions in place that you're like, you know what, even if it's not going to be a prenup, I'm putting this in a trust fund, you know, and then you have access to it if we still marry. So
Right.
those are though everything is negotiable. It's not sign here or don't share my bed, but
Hmm.
it's conversations that there's options.
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
You mentioned something of one of your clients. She has multiple LLCs from her
Mhm.
doing real estate. What is the reason of her actually doing that? I know you said can't have no more than three.
It's not a can't, it's a shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
If
Okay,
I,
gotcha.
yeah, because just think, like I would say recovering trial attorney, but I had to recover because something about trial and I don't like to lose and it brings out the dark side of me. Okay. I had to do my own Kika Masha Kumbaya situationship. And now I do more transactional, but I set things up with knowledge of litigation and knowledge of, hey, if there's ever a complaint, there's an exhibit to this, right? So when you have a real estate empire, and I have a lot of clients who have real estate empires, if you have one business entity and it had 20 properties, but then somebody had a slip and fall, right? Now they're going after all 20
Oh,
properties. They're
yes,
going
they do.
they're going to run a train in your assets. You
Yes,
want
they
that
do.
to happen without prophylactics? That paperwork is the prophylactics, and that asset protection is just having the foresight to know that you don't want someone to have access to all of your assets.
Yes. That is so true. I honestly, I have daycare center.
Okay.
I had a second daycare center, but I did it separately.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, some people may want to sue you for anything or whatever. I just wanted to protect my other one so
Yes.
that they can't, because a lot of times people like, oh, I'm about to sue her. I'm gonna take all everything that she
Uh-huh.
you know, that's a person's mindset. That's what
Yes.
they're gonna do. But a lot of people don't know having multiples save you from multiple problems.
Oh yes, exactly. That part. And in this litigious society, because I used to do insurance defense. So I would protect people when they got sued. So I was like
Mhm.
the insurance attorney when people got sued. And when people, sometimes attorneys always know that we are business people too. And then when people come in, we're not all like social workers saying we're going to sue for the principle of the matter. We're not, it's a business deal and we're going to sue. But if people have no assets, because when I look up your social security number or when I look up your name, I can't find anything. Or if I get an investigator to do an asset research, and I don't see anything, then it's going to be less likely that I want to take a lawsuit. Whereas if I see that I can run up because you pretty much put everything in one limited liability company, yeah, I'm going for it. And then I'm
Mhm.
going to attach everything. And I know
Yeah.
I'm going to get paid my 50% or more. And and the plaintiff is going to get paid, with regards to it. So
Yes.
that's where that protection comes into play.
Yes, and that protection is needed so bad.
Yeah.
Even if it comes down to you even having your own home and your home is paid for,
Mm-hmm.
put it in something else, instead of having it in your name as well.
Yes. So always remember, because we were talking about trust, a trust fund is an agreement. So I always have my clients wrap their assets in like a limited liability company, with regard, or a holding company. A holding company doesn't have to operate, but generally a limited liability company, it's like, oh, this is the operating and this is the one that's holding the assets. So not to get
Mhm.
into detail, but because sometimes people are like, that's too much legal, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want I don't want it to be too much legal, but I want it to be knowledgeable with regards to when you're
Yeah.
putting things into a trust. Always remember you still need structure, with
Mhm.
regards to it. And even when you already know in business, but also there's a lot of people who are still doing business as a sole proprietor. And some people, even accountants and people are doing what is it, they're doing tax preparers and things like that. They tell people, you don't need an LLC, you don't need this, you don't need that. I'm like, here's the deal. If you not wrapped your assets in an LLC, then anybody can snatch your personal and your business assets. And then,
Mhm.
but an LLC stops the bleed, So if someone's coming after your business, then they can only come after what the business owns, presuming that you're doing the right thing and playing by the rules with regards to it. But if you're not playing by, remember we talk about having a business bank account, having loans. Like if you're going to loan
Yeah.
yourself, I want you to put it in writing. If you have multiple businesses, I want you to keep it separate with regards to the multiple businesses. That way, people can't say, like a savvy attorney such as myself, oh, well, if you wasn't running your business like a business person, why should the court now force my client to be stuck at the level of playing field with regards to the limited liability company? No, we want to bust that wide open, and
Mhm.
we're going to set it aside because the way you was playing business, you wasn't handling business, right? And so that's why people have to, if you're not that legal type of person, if you're like, this is too much, I can't deal with it, but you running those numbers up, you get in the bag, and you need to protect your assets and secure your legacy by hiring someone who pretty much eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they know everything with regards to asset protection, so that they're not just giving you like a shoddy deal with regards to a contract, but at least giving you the strategy that you need, so that when people come for you, they can't get all of you.
Mhm. That part. That is so important.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate you with all this information that's given. I know you have so much more to give. So, can you please let people know the different services that you offer and how much you could help them?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. So the different services I offer is I literally do from startup to succession planning. So if you're starting your business, I assist with that with regards to legally launching your business. I do intellectual property because I literally look at our RP, our portfolio. Most people, when I used to be a financial advisor, I would tell people, oh, get a mutual fund or get some stock. Now I'm like, dude, create your business, create your own asset portfolio, and use your creativity as currency. Okay. So I help people with intellectual property. I help people literally, sometimes you have to divorce your partner because sometimes we get into business with people who don't want to grow or who want to pimp our knowledge. So
Hmm.
I help them with that, with regards to having those conversations. And then I also help with regards to succession planning, estate planning, and setting up trust. So literally from setup, from startup to succession planning, and all of the strategy throughout the in between. That's what I do.
Yes. And that's all that we need. And then some. I really appreciate you for this because a lot of people, they just don't know, or they still have a question mark,
Mhm.
because sometimes misinformation is being received a lot.
Oh, yes.
And just having someone that's authentic and actually know exactly what someone really need instead of wasting their time. I
Mhm.
really appreciate you just even just giving your knowledge for these minutes of being on Life Her podcast.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And come on now, life her. Come on now. So I'm like, listen,
Listen.
you got life be life, and but when your assets are protected, you can just move on.com and it's all good.
MoveOn.com. I know that's right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for being on my show tonight.
Thank you for having me. You have an
Thank,
awesome day.
thank you. You too. Good
Okay.
night.
Bye for now.